Good morning, everyone. I am Göran Bolin, Professor of Media and Communication Studies at Södertörn University in Sweden. And I'm going to talk today on the metric mindset, social life in datafied media landscapes. So we all know that the media landscape is permeated with digital media, with social media, and that we increasingly communicate through social media. And a large part of the social media is centered around metrics, measurements that we are all react in relation to. So we can say that metrics also has risen on the agenda of media research lately. And the premise for this talk is that data, that is numerical information, has strong impact on the social everyday life, the digital everyday, if you will, and the mundane activities of engaging with media. Much research on datafication and datafied media landscapes point to the need for new tools of understanding social life in the digital everyday. That is then, among other things, the presence of metrics in these landscapes. And with the introduction of new methods, digital methods or computational social science, for example, as is often mentioned, this research has focused on the methods of the medium, that is, the methods that the media, the social media themselves allow. So why would we focus on metrics? Well, metrics are an important part of the media landscape, and especially for the business models of social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Google, etc. But also for the operations of Google and other search engines. And metrics are produced for multiple purposes. They are used to drive user engagement. They are used to deliver information about users, and they have become the actual commodity circulating in the market. But metrics are also key in the move from informational to data capitalism, that is, from informational capitalism to data capitalism. And has become central to the production modes. And these modes alter our relation to the media, you could say. In the words of Italian sociologist Andrea Mubi Briganti, he says that metrics have become environments in which we live, an air that we breathe, an atmospheric component of society. So they have become naturalized in our everyday whereabouts with media. However, what is technologically privileged does not always correspond to what is culturally adopted. And with David Beer, we can say that we are still limited in our understanding of the lived realities of data circulation that are to be found within the mundane routines of everyday life. And in order to reach such an understanding, we should ask what meanings are produced by media users in relation to metrics. And what are the new epistemological consequences of the rise of metrics in digital media and in the everyday? So, more precisely, one would wish to know how we can research the increasingly metrified and algorithmically steered media landscape, including metrics. And how can we research the perceptions of metrics? How are metrics perceived by its users, and how does it feel? How do metrics feel? These are questions that I've been interested in for some time now, and I will talk a bit about relevant research on this and also give an account of a pilot study with examples from a pilot study that I have conducted. So we can say that there are quite a lot of research now into metrics and to the relation between digital, social media, and media users. Some of these comes from the digital humanities and digital sociology and computational sciences. So we have software and platform-oriented studies which use digital methods to crawl Twitter, for example, and produce Twitter flows and see how they the distribution of use, etc. We have also more specialized debates on interface methods and algorithm methods that can be used. There are also quite a lot of research into media that are media user oriented, that focus on the media users, because much of the software and platform oriented studies is directed towards technology in itself. Whereas you also have research into media use, for example, on self-tracking, and that can be in different forms. You have quite a lot of research that use ethnographic methods, but also interviews, both individual interviews and focus group interviews. And also focuses on the use in more mundane and everyday media practices. And there are a lot of themes discussed around this research, to which extent metrics are objectively measuring reality, or what it does mean. The economic models has been focused connected to metrics, and also the practices of ranking. And there is quite some research into the implications of rankings. When we are measured, we are also ranked in a certain way. There is a famous study by Wendy Espeland and her colleague Södertörn on how organizations react when they are being ranked and measured and ranked, which are interesting backgrounds to my interests. So metrics, we can distinguish between different types of metrics in social media. On the one hand, we have representational metrics, that is those metrics, those figures that we see on social media interfaces. When we go into Twitter or Facebook, we get to know how many likes this post has, how many friends do we have, how many retweets, how many times is this post shared, etc., etc. So these are metrics that are obvious to us, that we can see as media users on the interface. On the other hand, these interfaces also have operational metrics, those metrics that make the social media do things to us, for example, place advertising. And if we look for example, on what a tweet knows about us, there are several things that metrics that are produced in a tweet that we do not come to see as an ordinary media users, but of course that Twitter sees, and Twitter acts on the basis of those metrics. So this is a basic distinction between representational metrics and operational metrics. So this is, for example, the Facebook interface, and I've taken this screen grab from Benjamin Grosser, the US artist and the interaction designer Benjamin Grosser, and his extension that you can use and install on Chrome, Safari, and other browsers that takes away all metrics. So it's called the Facebook Demetricator, and it also works for Twitter and Instagram. So these red rings on this interface represent all the numbers that you can see on the Facebook interface. And the Demetricator, if you install that on your browser, you can talk on and off those metrics, so you can take them away. When I came across this plugin, I was very interested in knowing more about this, because Benjamin Grosser has also theoretically grounded his work in the idea that people will behave differently if you take away the metrics. And I wanted more systematically to study this, so I started off by testing this, having people install the Facebook demetricator and then interview them about the experience to install that demetricator for a week, for example. So in terms of findings, if you can talk about that, this was a very small pilot study that I've done, and I've used for this occasion quotes from the first test I did with 8 interviewees. But already there you could distinguish between different types of reactions that these users had to the removal of the metrics, and it was in terms of a certain type of disorientations. So you could see temporal disorientations and social disorientations, and also disorientations when it came to questions of value and valuation. And I will give you one example each of these disorientations. So the first, temporal disorientation, I had this informant saying, well, you miss certain posts. Some functions you can learn to be without, but for me it didn't work out not knowing time. It would be pointless for certain things to be on Facebook then. Certain info you get from Facebook is time-bound. It would be rude of me to comment congratulations on a friend's engagement 3 weeks later. So this reveals how this informant was disoriented in relation to time, and when you cannot judge how old a post is. Secondly, you also had a certain amount of social disorientation. So this person said that I felt it strange. And as I said earlier, I became almost annoyed or frustrated maybe. I think that social media without these interactions removes a rather large part of the social, or how to say. Also interesting how rooted this is in people, how important that is. I didn't really know that. So in that sense, this person is telling us about how the relations to other people changes somewhat when you take away all the metrics. Without the interactions, the social quality of the medium disappears to this user. Thirdly and lastly, we have these value disorientations. So this person says, it did change my perception of how newsworthy or important something was when just scrolling through. If you see that a post has 20,000 likes and see something that has less, I at least rank them. Some news will appear to be more important. Then I will read it before reading another less important article, because there's so much information. I found that difficult, implying that it was difficult not to evaluate whether a news item was important, or so that you should read it or not. So with these few examples, I've given some hints about how we can approach the meaning of metrics, what they mean to people in different social settings. And you could of course say that Facebook, as my example showed, is a specific, its metrics works in a specific way and cannot really be compared to Twitter. And that's true, of course. These are two different media and they work in different ways, and thus the metrics mean different things. And also if you would do this on Instagram, it might mean a third thing. So I think we need much more methodological development in order to study metrics and to try to capture small nuances that the metrics produce in our understanding of the world around us and how we then behave in relation to that world. So what I just accounted for was a combination of traditional audience studies methods, interviews, with experimental methods where the software itself was manipulated. I found that quite revealing and quite valuable for understanding the processes of meaning formation in relation to metrics. And I think we need more such sensitizing methodologies in order to try to understand the full implications of metrics in everyday life. So with this, I thank you for listening, and obrigado.